Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. All right, so we're still playing holiday shopping here on Big Blend Radio, and we have author Michael Nemeth on the show, which for all these years, Mike, I've been saying Mike Nemeth, and you never corrected me. And I found out the other day when you did the Asheville benefit for Hurricane Helene, when you did a recording and a book reading, you said Michael Nemeth. So I have been pronouncing your name incorrectly for years. So my apologies, but happy holidays.
Well, the same to you. Happy holidays. Yeah. It's amazing. 6 letters long, and people really have trouble with it.
Well, we get there. We get there eventually. So, everyone, I encourage you. Number one is, Michael is an amazing author. Has written, how many books have you written?
Seven,
Wow,
five,
7 books.
yeah, 5 novels. Yep.
5 novels, so everyone, you can go to MikeNemethAuthor.com and you can go under books and see them all. But today for the holidays, you wanted to talk about 2 books that would make a great gift. So why don't you give us an overview of the 2 books because they are connected, right?
They are connected. They're prequel and sequel. Uh, the prequel is called A Tissue of Lies. And in A Tissue of Lies, we meet Eddie Kovacs for the first time, and he's 14. He has a birthday during the book, during the story, so he turns out to be 15. He's the neglected middle child in a blue-collar family in the 1960s. These 2 books that go together really tell the story of the baby boomer generation, starting with Eddie in his early teens in the 1960s. And then the sequel, which I'll also talk about, the Eddie Kovacs, picks him up as an adult until the present day, in fact. So from a holiday gift giving perspective, these 2 books, which sort of tell the story of the boomer generation, are perfect for your grandparents who are probably baby boomers, and a little bit of nostalgia for them as they read these 2 stories. But they're also perfect for your Gen Z grandkids, who are probably not all that aware of exactly what their grandparents went through. I have a Gen Z grandson and a Gen Z granddaughter, and they both sort of believe that life is very difficult for them right now in their generation. And I tell them all the time, you have no idea what your grandparents went through. We lived through political assassinations, the Vietnam War, war protests, race riots all over the country, the Vietnam draft, which plays a large role in this story, A Tissue of Lies. The threat of nuclear annihilation was very real at the time. We were all taught how to duck and cover and get under our desks
Yes.
in school.
Yeah.
And they'd be very shocked to hear that homosexuality was actually a crime in most states at the time. Well, that's the environment that Eddie is growing up in. And Eddie and his rambunctious, rebellious little girlfriend, Marcy, are learning about the adult world. And they learn that Eddie's mother is probably an alcoholic. Eddie's father appears to be stealing money from the church. And older brother Danny is secretly gay. And when Danny gets his draft notice, it's up to Eddie really to save his brother's life from the Vietnam draft, to save his father from jail, or at least excommunication from the church. And Eddie faces a real challenge because he may just have to give up his own dreams in order to help his family through that crisis, or a series of crises, really. So that's A Tissue of Lies, and it tells basically the story of what it was like to be a boomer in the early days in the 1960s. Then we
Yeah.
switch to the two lives of Eddie Kovacs. And in this one, Eddie is already a retired detective. So he was actually forced to retire because he had gone to the press about prosecutorial misbehavior in a case
Mm.
against a cop who was accused of shooting a black man. So
Oh.
Eddie is now on the sidelines, if you will, until a friend of his, the sheriff of Chatham County, which is Savannah, Georgia, asks him to go undercover into a condo complex on Tybee Island because the DEA thinks people there are dying of opioid overdoses. And the sheriff really wants to solve that case before the DEA and the feds all come into his territory, right? So Eddie agrees to do that. Eddie thinks, number one, maybe he can end his career in a blaze of glory. But Eddie also has regrets. We get flashbacks to his time in Vietnam where something terrible happens in Vietnam. And Eddie has really kind of not gotten over that. And he wants to
Hmm.
finally put it behind him. And Eddie's wife has also passed away from breast cancer. And he's afraid he really didn't handle that the way he probably should have. But he's undercover in this condo complex with these regrets kind of
No.
driving his behavior. And he meets a woman to whom he becomes attracted, but who is also probably a link to why people are dying in this condo complex. And all I can tell you is it's not opioids, but it is shocking.
Ooh, cliffhanger. Mike,
Cliffhanger.
I know. Well, but this is fascinating too because you're getting into the human psyche of what makes people, go off the rails in some ways, right? And also what makes them tick, what makes them happy, sad, all of those things that is human life. But at the same time, I think when you look at like a tissue of lives, you're talking about the boomer generation. Well, it kind of feels like what was going on at that time is coming back around now. So what the generation of today is feeling, I mean, I remember the boomer generation, Nancy always talks about it. She said, we were talking about climate change then too. And here it is, just a bigger threat. And they said it was coming at one point. That was the era of when, it was not called climate change. I don't even know if they were calling it global warming, but we knew smog in LA needed to come down and all of those kinds of things.
Air
But
pollution.
air pollution, smog, all of that kind of thing. Um, but now we're looking at nuclear threat is still a problem. It is. You never know what can happen with North Korea. We don't know what's going to happen. So I think, political arrests, unrest, not arrests, not yet anyway, but unrests. I didn't say that. Unrest has happened. Assassination attempts have happened since then. And so we've got to kind of look at the bond between the generation of today and the boomer generation. I think your book is kind of bonding the two together for some common ground. What do you think?
Absolutely. Part of the point is that uh, it's not like the baby boomer generation created this terrible world, right? The fact of the matter is the world has always been in crisis, right?
Yes.
Has
Yeah.
always been in crisis. And in fact, there are some things that are actually somewhat better today than they
Yes.
were for boomers when they were growing up. Uh, and you can't focus on the things of today and try to finger point. I don't think
No. Yeah, yeah.
the world is what it is, and it's always been a difficult place. Uh, but I think another point that I try to make is that boomers boomers approached those problems a little differently than I think what we see today. They addressed these problems head on. They tried to fix these problems. They certainly caused a lot of change. I mean, boomers ended the Vietnam War. Boomers created an economy second to none in the world. Homosexuality is no longer a crime.
Hopefully we'll stay that way. We'll see.
Hopefully we'll stay that way. Exactly. So, baby boomers had an attitude of, we can live through this and we can solve these problems. And I think our youngest generation is still grappling with exactly how do they deal with what they have, in the world today.
I think it's so important to have these connections because it is a different world. I mean, I was listening to a podcast with Jane Goodall, and she was, I love Jane Goodall, and she was just talking about how in her generation, she was raised with no TV had been invented, and now she's like, we have Zoom calls like what you and I are on right now. She goes, it's, just bewildering to see how development has happened. And it was the boomer generation. IBM, come on, that was the beginning, right, of it all. And then we get Apple later. IBM was at the beginning. And it's funny because I know people that were part of the beginning of that, and they came out of hippie communes out in the boonies in America. They literally were communes, free love and all of that. And some dodged the draft. And I'm not naming names. I'm just saying. And then they realized, well, this isn't really going to work. This was great. We do care, but we are going to, because, kids were being born and they realized, well, we're going to have to do some change. And then next thing you know, they ended up in corporate America, which was not at all, they were actually fighting against it at one point. But they made some changes on that too, I think, how that works.
Yeah. I don't think we got everything right. I think there's still progress, obviously, to be made.
Yeah.
But the point is, you gotta pull up your bootstraps and deal with it.
Agreed. And there's some I think no matter what technology we have, right? Well, now we have AI. Did you ever think that would happen? All these things that are happening, but at the same time, there's some just basic realities in life and how to handle things, no matter what you have in technology, whether we had no TV or we do, whether we have internet or we don't, there's some basic fundamentals. And I think those are things that we can learn from reading your novels, is going back to just even really, cognitive, like actually thinking, critical thinking, and then follow through, right? So I think you bring that, and also the warmth of it. And as you say, we're not perfect. Human beings are never perfect. And it's okay to that's the beauty of reading. You feel like, oh, okay, I don't feel so bad anymore. I wasn't perfect. You get to feel better through characters, right? Don't you feel that with people reading?
Absolutely. Identifying with the characters in a book is a very pleasing and educational experience, right? You identify with those characters and you say, okay, I'm not alone in the world. These characters felt that too. And these characters dealt with it, and I can as well. So yes, the novels are good stories, but they're also meant to be guides from which you can take things away, things you can continue to think about, things you can be encouraged to do.
Exactly. I love it. So some good inspiration. And you know what? There's nothing like a cold winter's day and a good novel, you know?
Well, I think people sometimes overlook the idea of books as presents for the holidays. We all scurry around trying to figure out, what's that perfect gift for this person or that person or the other person. A book is actually a fairly personal present that you give
I think so.
someone. here is something I like that I hope you like. Here is something that encouraged me and may encourage you. Uh, and so these books are available at any bookstore. You might have to order them, but they can be ordered through any bookstore. Obviously, they're available online at the Big Kahuna.
And bookshop.org.
And bookshop.org. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can get them. And the other thing is, if it's last minute, you can get an ebook, right? So that's another thing. If you need to send it overseas too, it's like something you can gift anywhere.
Exactly. Exactly. You can actually gift an ebook now, and it's instantaneous. So
Thank you, IBM.
yeah,
Not that they did that, but you know what I mean. It
yeah,
started something, didn't it?
yeah.
Love that. I love that. Well, there's always the gift of books because they keep giving. To me, it's like once you've read a book, yes, you can put it on your shelf. Hopefully, it just doesn't sit there forever. You've read it. I feel like it should be passed on. That's just me. Or you're going to read it again in 5 to 10 years. That's fine, but it should be shared. A story should be shared.
I
That's how
agree.
I feel.
I agree.
So keep it
You
going.
know, we have simply evolved from telling stories around the campfire, right?
Yeah.
And now we tell stories in paper.
Mm.
Uh, that and it's a whole lot more convenient than shivering in the cold around a campfire.
And then hoping you said the right thing at the right time and you have to be a performer to do that.
Yeah,
That's a little
yeah.
different. It's a little different. And yeah, we don't want to wear loincloths anymore. Okay. Well, Mike, happy holidays to you and your loved ones. I hope you enjoy them.
We will. We will. Thank you, Lisa. Say hi to your mom for me.
I will.
And happy holidays to everyone out there who's listening.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.